History is often told through kings, empires, and great battles. But some of the most extraordinary discoveries ever made are far quieter than that. Beneath modern cities, hidden beneath deserts, resting at the bottom of the sea, or forgotten inside abandoned caves, archaeologists have uncovered places and objects that completely changed what we thought we knew about the ancient world. In this documentary, we'll explore 25 remarkable discoveries. A city that vanished beneath the ocean, a library that tried to collect all human knowledge, a tiny Roman jar whose ancient skincare cream survived for nearly 2,000 years, navigation charts that guided sailors across the Pacific without a compass, and many more stories that reveal not just how ancient people lived, but how surprisingly advanced they truly were. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin our journey through some of history's most fascinating archaeological discoveries. If ancient mysteries like this keep you up at night, literally, I put together a book on the sleep rituals of Egypt, Sumer, the Maya, and the Norse. Check the link below. Now, back to today's story. The bronze hand that still pointed toward the sky. For nearly 3,000 years, it lay beneath the soil of a quiet Swiss hillside, hidden beneath layers of earth, hidden beneath forgotten centuries. No temples marked its location, no monuments stood above it, only grass, trees, and silence. Then, during an archaeological excavation near the small village of Pralys, something remarkable emerged from the ground. Not a sword, not a crown, not a statue, a human hand, cast entirely from bronze. Its fingers stretched gently upward, as though it had been reaching toward the sky since the Bronze Age itself. It was unlike anything archaeologists had ever found in Europe. The artifact is now known as the Bronze Hand of Pralys, discovered in western Switzerland near Lake Biel, in a region that has been home to farming communities since prehistoric times. At first glance, it appears almost lifelike. The fingers are carefully shaped. The thumb rests naturally against the palm. Even the fingernails were delicately formed by the ancient craftsmen. But one detail immediately sets it apart. Around the wrist sits a thin band of gold, not painted, not plated. A genuine sheet of gold carefully attached to the bronze. For an object nearly 3,500 years old, it was an astonishing display of craftsmanship. The discovery was made in 2017 by amateur metal detectorists working legally alongside archaeologists, who immediately recognized that they had uncovered something extraordinary. Alongside the bronze hand were several other ancient objects. A finely crafted bronze dagger, a bronze pin, fragments of human bone. Everything suggested that this had once been an important burial. Yet the hand itself had no parallel. Nothing like it had ever been found from Europe's Bronze Age. The site was later excavated professionally. Beneath layers of collapsed stone, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a carefully constructed grave. At its center lay the skeleton of an adult man, believed to have died around 1500 BC. Near him rested the mysterious bronze hand. The placement did not appear accidental. It seemed to have been buried with great care, as though it had held profound meaning during his lifetime, or perhaps even after his death. Scientific analysis revealed that the hand had been cast using sophisticated bronze working techniques already mastered by Bronze Age metalworkers. Molten bronze had been poured into a carefully prepared mold. Once cooled, the surface was polished. Then the delicate gold cuff was fitted around the wrist. Inside the hollow hand, archaeologists discovered traces of an adhesive-like substance and a narrow socket. This suggested the hand had once been attached to another object. But to what? No answer has survived. Some researchers believe the bronze hand may have crowned a ceremonial staff, held high during rituals, visible from a distance. Others suggest it could have rested atop a wooden pole carried by a tribal leader, a symbol of authority, power, or divine protection. Because the wooden portion has long since decayed, only the bronze survived, leaving behind a mystery without its most important piece. The man buried beside the hand appears to have held an unusually high position within his community. The grave itself was richer than many others from the same period. The bronze dagger was finely made. The ornaments were carefully placed. The burial overlooked the surrounding landscape from an elevated ridge. This was not an ordinary farmer, nor an ordinary grave. Everything points towards someone of exceptional status. Whether that status was political, religious, or both remains uncertain. The gold decoration adds another layer of mystery. Gold was incredibly rare during the European Bronze Age. Unlike bronze, which combined copper and tin, gold carried no practical purpose. Its value was symbolic. It reflected wealth, prestige, connections to distant trade networks. The tiny gold band wrapped around the wrist may have transformed the hand from a simple object into something sacred, or royal, or perhaps both. One of the most fascinating questions concerns what the hand actually represented. Was it meant to resemble a living person's hand? The hand of an ancestor? A forgotten deity? Or was it simply a symbol understood by people whose beliefs have disappeared forever? Unlike ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, Bronze Age Switzerland left behind no written language, no myths, no names, no explanations, only objects, beautifully crafted, completely silent. Chemical studies of the metals reveal another remarkable story. The copper and tin used to create the bronze likely traveled hundreds of kilometers before reaching the workshop where the hand was cast. During the Bronze Age, Europe was already connected through surprisingly extensive trade routes. Communities exchanged metals, amber, salt, and luxury goods across mountains and rivers. The bronze hand of Prales was not created in isolation. It belonged to a wider world that stretched far beyond the Swiss plateau. Today, the artifact continues to challenge archaeologists because it does not fit comfortably into any known category. It is not a weapon, not a tool, not ordinary jewelry, not a complete statue. It occupies a place entirely its own, the tomb where a man was buried with an iron throne. For more than 2,000 years, it lay hidden beneath a frozen mound in southern Siberia, buried beneath layers of earth, grass, and centuries of forgotten history. Snow fell across the landscape each winter. Spring returned. Generations of nomads crossed the valley without knowing what rested below. The tomb remained undisturbed, waiting silently. Then archaeologists arrived. As they slowly peeled away the ancient burial mound, they uncovered something no one expected: a wooden throne, reinforced with iron, resting beside the remains of a man who had been laid to rest more than 2,000 years ago. It was a discovery that offered an extraordinary glimpse into one of the least understood civilizations of the ancient world. The site is known as Tunugwan, a massive burial mound, or kurgan, located in the Republic of Tuva in southern Siberia, not far from the border with Mongolia. Today, the region is a remote landscape of mountains, rivers, and open grasslands. But during the early Iron Age, these valleys were home to powerful nomadic societies whose lives revolved around horses, seasonal migration, and long-distance trade across the Eurasian steppe. Few written records describe them. Most of what we know comes directly from the graves they left behind. For decades, archaeologists knew the mound existed. Satellite imagery and aerial surveys revealed its enormous circular outline hidden beneath marshland and dense vegetation. Excavating it, however, proved far from simple. Much of the site remained permanently waterlogged. Groundwater seeped into every trench. Frozen soil slowed the work. Each summer offered only a brief opportunity to continue the excavation before harsh weather returned. The tomb guarded its secrets carefully. When researchers finally reached the central burial chamber, they discovered that ancient looters had entered the mound centuries earlier. Many valuable objects had disappeared, yet not everything had been taken. Among the surviving discoveries was an extraordinary wooden seat strengthened with iron fittings. It has often been described as an iron throne. Although modest in appearance compared to the golden treasures found elsewhere across the Eurasian steppe, its importance lies in what it represents. Very few people in this society would have possessed such an object. Its presence suggests the man buried here held exceptional authority, perhaps a tribal leader, perhaps a ruler, perhaps someone whose influence extended across the surrounding valleys. The burial itself dates to approximately the 9th century BC. This places it among the earliest monumental kurgans ever constructed by the culture commonly associated with the Scythian world. Long before these horse-riding peoples appeared in the writings of Greek historians, they were already building enormous burial monuments across the Eurasian steppe. Tunugwan stands among the oldest examples yet discovered. Its construction marks the beginning of a tradition that would continue for centuries. Excavations also revealed the remains of horses buried around the mound. This was not unusual. Throughout the ancient steppe, horses held enormous practical and symbolic importance. They carried warriors across vast distances, connected distant communities, and often accompanied important individuals into the afterlife. Their presence reflects a belief that death marked not an ending, but the beginning of another journey, one that required the same companions found in life. The mound itself is equally impressive. Built from thousands of carefully arranged stones and earth, it once dominated the surrounding landscape. Visible from great distances, it announced the presence of someone whose memory was meant to endure long after death. For generations, people likely gathered here to honor their ancestors and reinforce the authority of those who ruled before them. Today, much of that ceremonial world has disappeared. Only the mound remains, its original meaning slowly reconstructed through archaeology. The discovery of the iron-reinforced throne has raised many questions. Was it used during ceremonies before the burial? Did it serve as a symbol of political authority? Or was it created specifically for the funeral itself? No written records survive to answer these questions. The people who built Tunug left behind no history books, no inscriptions, no names. Only objects carefully placed beside the dead, each one offering another small clue to a civilization that still remains largely unknown. The soul house that still bears its maker's fingerprints. For nearly 4,000 years, it waited in silence, not inside a royal tomb, not beneath the sands of the Valley of the Kings, but inside the ruins of an ordinary Egyptian settlement. Dust slowly settled across its tiny walls. Empires rose and fell. Dynasties came to an end. The Nile continued its endless journey to the sea. Yet this small clay house remained exactly where it had been left. Then archaeologists uncovered it. As they gently brushed away the earth, they noticed something unexpected. Pressed into the soft clay, still perfectly visible after thousands of years, were the fingerprints of the person who had made it. Not a king, not a priest, simply an ancient craftsman whose touch had survived longer than his name. Today, the artifact is known as a soul house. One of the finest examples is preserved in the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge. It dates to Egypt's Middle Kingdom, around 2000 BC, a period when Egyptian civilization was flourishing along the Nile. Unlike the magnificent temples and pyramids that dominate history books, soul houses belong to ordinary people. They reveal a quieter side of ancient Egypt, a world of family, memory, and everyday belief. At first glance, the object resembles a simple clay model of a house. It includes a small courtyard surrounded by low walls, tiny stairways, storage jars, and carefully shaped offerings of bread, meat, and vegetables arranged across the surface. Every detail was formed by hand while the clay remained soft, then fired in a kiln until it hardened into ceramic. During that process, the maker unknowingly left fingerprints pressed into the wet surface. Thousands of years later, those same prints remain visible, an accidental signature from someone history never recorded. Despite their name, soul houses were not intended for the living. They were created for the dead. Many ancient Egyptians believed that after death, a person's spiritual essence, known as the ka, continued to require food, shelter, and care. Families placed these miniature houses above graves as symbolic homes where the spirit could receive offerings from the living. The food modeled in clay represented an endless supply. The house itself became a place where the soul could rest between worlds. It was both practical and deeply spiritual. Interestingly, many soul houses do not resemble grand Egyptian palaces. Instead, they reflect the architecture of ordinary homes, their staircases, courtyards, bread ovens, and storage rooms offer archaeologists a rare glimpse into domestic life nearly 4,000 years ago. Because so few everyday houses survived the passage of time, these miniature models have become valuable archaeological records. In many cases, they preserve architectural details that disappeared from the real buildings long ago. The fingerprints make the artifact even more remarkable. Normally, ancient objects are admired for the rulers who commissioned them or the civilizations that produced them. This one tells a different story. It reminds us that every monument, every temple, every statue was ultimately created by human hands. Someone gathered the clay, mixed it with water, shaped each tiny wall, pressed every loaf of bread into place, then lifted the finished object into a kiln. Without realizing it, their fingertips would remain impressed forever. Researchers have carefully studied these fingerprints. Although they cannot identify the individual who made the object, they offer a remarkably personal connection with the past. Unlike inscriptions carved by kings or official records written by scribes, fingerprints cannot be copied or rewritten. They belong to one person alone, perhaps a skilled potter, perhaps an apprentice learning the craft, Perhaps someone whose entire life has vanished, except for a few delicate impressions left in drying clay. The Soul House also reveals how differently the ancient Egyptians viewed death. For them, burial was not simply an ending. It marked the beginning of another existence. The dead continued to eat, continued to receive visitors, continued to exist within a carefully ordered spiritual world. Providing food and shelter for the K was an act of love, a way of ensuring that family bonds endured beyond death itself. The tiny clay house became a bridge between two worlds, one seen, one unseen. The Roman trumpet buried in an Iron Age hoard. For more than 2,000 years, it lay hidden beneath an English field, buried in silence, wrapped in darkness, its voice forever quiet. Rain fell across the countryside. Harvests came and went. Villages became towns. Kingdoms rose across Britain. Yet beneath the soil, an ancient instrument waited exactly where it had been left. Then archaeologists began to excavate. As the earth slowly gave way, fragments of bronze appeared, curved, decorated, unlike anything normally found in Roman Britain. Piece by piece, they realized they were looking at one of Europe's rarest musical instruments, a carnyx, a towering Iron Age war trumpet whose terrifying sound had once echoed across ancient battlefields. The discovery was made in Norfolk, eastern England, where archaeologists uncovered a remarkable Iron Age hoard buried shortly after the Roman conquest of Britain in the 1st century AD. The objects had not been scattered randomly. They had been carefully placed together beneath the ground. Weapons, horse equipment, metal fittings, and among them, the shattered remains of a bronze carnyx. Although damaged by time, enough survived to reveal its extraordinary form. The carnyx was unlike any ordinary trumpet. Instead of pointing forward, its long bronze tube rose vertically above the player. At its top sat a beautifully crafted animal head. Some resembled wild boars, others wolves or dragons. Their mouths opened wide, their ears stood alert. Their features were designed not simply for decoration, but to inspire fear. When played, the instrument projected its sound high above warriors gathered below. Its deep, haunting call carried across hills and open fields. To ancient armies, it announced far more than music. It announced power. The carnyx was first developed by Iron Age Celtic peoples several centuries before the Roman conquest. Ancient Greek and Roman writers described hearing these strange instruments during battles against Celtic tribes across Europe. They wrote of a deafening chorus of horns rising above the clash of weapons, a sound unlike anything the Mediterranean world had encountered. For Roman soldiers, the carnyx became one of the defining sounds of their northern enemies. That is what makes the Norfolk discovery so remarkable. Although Britain had become part of the Roman Empire after AD 43, this instrument belonged to an older tradition. Its presence inside the hoard suggests that Iron Age customs did not disappear overnight. Communities continued to preserve objects that carried deep cultural meaning. Even as Roman influence spread across the landscape, some traditions endured quietly beneath the surface. Researchers believe the hoard was buried intentionally, perhaps during a time of conflict, perhaps as a sacred offering, or perhaps to protect valuable possessions that were never recovered. No written record explains why it was placed beneath the earth. The people responsible left behind no inscription, no message, only the objects themselves, waiting patiently for archaeology to discover them. Careful conservation revealed remarkable craftsmanship. The bronze sheets had been hammered into shape with astonishing precision. Rivets held separate sections together. Decorative details around the animal head displayed the skill of experienced metalworkers. Creating such an instrument required time, resources, and specialized knowledge. The carnyx was never an ordinary possession. It likely belonged to an important warrior, ceremonial leader, or musician whose role carried great significance within the community. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the instrument was its sound. Modern craftsmen have created faithful reconstructions using archaeological evidence. When played, the carnyx produces a haunting, powerful tone unlike the smooth sound of modern brass instruments. It growls, roars, almost seems to cry through the open jaws of the bronze animal head. Ancient writers described these instruments creating confusion among enemies before battle began. Whether those accounts were exaggerated or not, there is little doubt the sound would have been unforgettable. Standing before the fragments today, it takes imagination to picture what once existed. A towering bronze trumpet rising above a crowd, its animal head catching the morning light, a musician drawing a deep breath. Then a single note, rolling across the hills of ancient Britain. For the people who heard it, that sound may have meant celebration, ceremony, or war. Now, the instrument itself is silent. Its owner is unknown. Its music has faded into history, yet buried beneath the fields of Norfolk. Its voice waited more than 2,000 years for someone to listen once again, not through written words, but through the echoes preserved in bronze. The ancient city where an entire street was frozen in time. For nearly 17 centuries, the street lay undisturbed. Its houses stood empty. Its doorways remained open. Wind drifted through abandoned rooms. Sand slowly covered the stone road. Generation after generation passed above it. Empires collapsed. Religions changed. The desert quietly reclaimed what people had left behind. Then archaeologists began to uncover the city. Wall after wall emerged from the earth. Shops, homes, granaries, temples, and between them, an entire street, still stretching exactly where ancient footsteps had once echoed. Not rebuilt, not imagined, simply waiting beneath the Egyptian sand. The forgotten city is known as Karanis. It lies on the northeastern edge of Egypt's Fayum oasis, southwest of modern Cairo. Unlike the pyramids or the temples of Luxor, Karanis was never built for kings. It was a town for ordinary people. Farmers, merchants, soldiers, families. For nearly 700 years, life unfolded along its streets before the city was finally abandoned. Because the dry Egyptian climate preserved it so remarkably, Karanis has become one of the best surviving examples of everyday life in the ancient world. The city was founded during the 3rd century BC under the rule of the Ptolemaic dynasty, descendants of Alexander the Great's general, Ptolemy I. New settlers arrived from across the Mediterranean. Greek traditions mixed with Egyptian customs. The fertile land surrounding the Fayum supported wheat, olives, grapes, and vegetables. Canals carried water from the Nile. Trade flourished. As the centuries passed, Roman rule replaced Greek rule, yet Karanis continued to grow. Its streets became home to thousands of people living ordinary lives far from the imperial capitals. The city's main street formed its backbone. Stone houses lined both sides. Some rose to 2 stories. Shops opened directly onto the road. Workshops echoed with the sounds of craftsmen shaping wood, weaving cloth, and repairing tools. Children played in the narrow lanes. Donkeys carried grain through the marketplace. Neighbors gathered outside their homes during the cooler evening hours. Unlike royal monuments built for eternity, this street was built simply for everyday life. And perhaps that is what makes it so extraordinary today. Archaeologists began large-scale excavations at Karanis during the 1920s under the University of Michigan. As layers of drifting sand were carefully removed, an entire neighborhood gradually appeared. The houses remained remarkably intact. Many still contained staircases leading to upper floors. Storage jars rested where they had been left. Bread ovens stood inside kitchens. Wooden doors had long disappeared, but the stone thresholds remained exactly in place. Walking through Karanis today feels less like visiting ruins, and more like entering a town whose residents stepped away only yesterday. One of the greatest discoveries was not gold or jewelry. It was paper. Hundreds of ancient papyrus documents survived inside the abandoned houses. Letters between family members, tax records, military documents, shopping lists, school exercises, private contracts. These fragile pages revealed voices that history rarely preserves. One resident complained about unpaid debts. Another requested supplies from relatives. Children practiced writing the Greek alphabet. Together, these ordinary documents transformed archaeology. For once, ancient people spoke for themselves. Religion in Karanis reflected the city's diverse population. Temples dedicated to Egyptian crocodile gods stood alongside shrines influenced by Greek beliefs. Roman officials introduced their own customs. Rather than replacing one another, many traditions existed side by side. Families often blended different religious practices within the same household. It was a city where cultures met quietly, not through conquest alone, but through daily life. Eventually, however, the city began to decline. Changes in irrigation, economic difficulties, political instability within the later Roman Empire, perhaps shifting agricultural conditions as well. By the 5th century AD, Karanis was gradually abandoned. No great disaster destroyed it, No invading army burned it to the ground. People simply left, house by house, street by street, until silence replaced conversation. The desert completed what history had begun. Today, visitors can still walk along the same stone road once used by Roman farmers nearly 2,000 years ago. The walls remain. Doorways still open toward empty rooms. Windows frame the endless desert beyond. It is one of the rare places where archaeology preserves not the lives of emperors, but the routines of ordinary families. The fortress where archaeologists found a hidden wine cellar. For more than 27 centuries, the jars remained exactly where they had been left, sealed in darkness, hidden beneath layers of collapsed stone. Kings vanished, kingdoms disappeared, armies marched across the Armenian highlands, yet beneath the ruined fortress, hundreds of vessels still waited, filled long ago with wine that would never be poured. Then archaeologists uncovered the forgotten rooms. One doorway led to another, then another, until they realized they had entered an enormous storage complex unlike anything expected inside an ancient fortress. It was not an armory, not a treasury, but a wine cellar, one built for a kingdom that flourished nearly 3,000 years ago. The fortress is known as Erebuni. It stands on Erenburd Hill, overlooking the modern city of Yerevan, Armenia. In fact, Yerevan traces its origins directly to this ancient stronghold. Erebuni was founded in 782 BC by King Argishti I of the Kingdom of Urartu, a powerful state that controlled much of the Armenian highlands during the early Iron Age. Its massive walls of basalt and mud brick rose above the surrounding plains. From here, soldiers guarded trade routes, protected fertile farmland, and watched over one of the kingdom's most important frontier cities. At first glance, Erebuni appears to be a military fortress. High defensive walls, watchtowers, courtyards, administrative buildings. Everything suggests strength. Yet hidden within the complex was another kind of power. A series of storage rooms lined with enormous ceramic jars known as karases. Some stood nearly as tall as an adult. Others were partially buried into the floor to keep their contents cool throughout the changing seasons. Together, they formed one of the largest ancient wine storage facilities ever discovered in the region. When archaeologists carefully excavated these rooms, they counted well over 100 storage vessels. Many remained standing exactly where Urartian workers had placed them nearly 28 centuries earlier. Several still preserved traces of ancient wine residue absorbed into their clay walls. Chemical analysis confirmed what archaeologists had suspected. These giant jars had once held wine, not small quantities for household use, but thousands of liters stored for an entire fortress. The discovery revealed something remarkable about the kingdom of Urartu. Wine was not simply a luxury. It played an important role in the kingdom's economy, religious ceremonies, and political life. Royal inscriptions describe vineyards planted across the fertile valleys surrounding the fortress. Harvests were carefully collected, stored, and managed under royal supervision. The wine inside these jars may have supplied soldiers stationed at Erebuni, supported state festivals, or served during religious offerings made to the kingdom's gods. Every vessel represented careful planning rather than casual storage. The storage rooms themselves were ingeniously designed. Many of the jars were set deep into packed earth floors. This natural insulation helped maintain a stable temperature throughout the year. Even during the hot Armenian summers, the wine remained protected from sudden changes in heat. The thick clay walls of the vessels allowed tiny amounts of air to pass while preserving the liquid inside. Modern winemakers throughout the Caucasus still use similar clay vessels, continuing a tradition that stretches back thousands of years. Some methods have changed remarkably little. Erebuni itself was far more sophisticated than many people imagine. Bright wall paintings once decorated the palace rooms. Administrative tablets recorded supplies entering and leaving the fortress. Craftsmen worked bronze, iron, and stone. Priests performed ceremonies inside richly decorated temples. From the outside, it was a fortress. Inside, it functioned as the heart of an organized royal city. The wine cellar formed only one part of an administration capable of managing agriculture, taxation, religion, and defense across a vast kingdom. Eventually, however, the kingdom of Urartu began to weaken. Powerful neighbors pressed against its borders. Internal struggles grew more frequent. By the 6th century BC, the kingdom had disappeared from history. Its fortresses gradually fell into ruin. Roofs collapsed. Walls crumbled. Dust drifted into the abandoned storage rooms. The giant jars remained where they stood, too heavy to move, too deeply buried to attract looters. Their contents slowly vanished, their purpose forgotten. When archaeologists finally entered these chambers again, they were walking into a room no one had visited for more than 2.5 millennia. The silence remained. The rows of vessels still followed their original arrangement. The sacred well filled with Bronze Age offerings. For more than 3,000 years, the water kept its secret, dark, still, untouched by sunlight. One by one, objects disappeared beneath its surface. A sword, a spearhead, an axe, pieces of finely crafted bronze. None had been lost by accident. None had simply fallen into the water. Someone had placed them there, carefully, deliberately, then walked away. The offerings remained hidden beneath the marshes of eastern England while entire civilizations came and went, until archaeologists uncovered a place unlike any other in Bronze Age Britain. The site is known as Flag Fen. It lies near the modern city of Peterborough in eastern England. Today, the landscape appears peaceful. Flat fields stretch toward the horizon. Drainage canals cross the countryside. Yet more than 3,000 years ago, this area looked very different. Instead of farmland, it was a vast wetland of shallow lakes, reeds, wooden walkways, and slow-moving water. To the people who lived here, the marsh was far more than part of the landscape. It was a sacred place, a place where the human world met something beyond it. The remarkable site was discovered in 1982 by archaeologist Francis Pryor. As excavations began, researchers uncovered an extraordinary wooden causeway stretching across the ancient marsh. Built from thousands of oak posts driven deep into the soft ground, the timber pathway extended for nearly a kilometer. It connected areas of dry land separated by open water. Constructing such a structure demanded enormous effort. Entire communities must have worked together to gather the timber, shape the posts, and build the crossing. This was no ordinary footpath. It was clearly important. Then came the most surprising discovery. Around the wooden causeway, archaeologists began recovering bronze objects from the waterlogged ground. Not one or two, but hundreds. Swords, daggers, spearheads, axes, razors, pins, jewelry, fragments of tools. Many showed little evidence of everyday use. Some had even been deliberately bent or broken before entering the water. The pattern was impossible to ignore. These were not abandoned possessions. They were offerings. During the Bronze Age, metal was extraordinarily valuable. Copper and tin had to be mined, transported over long distances, and carefully alloyed to produce bronze. Creating a sword required remarkable skill. To place such an object into a lake or marsh represented a significant sacrifice. Whoever made these offerings surrendered something precious, not because it had lost its value, but because its value made the gift meaningful. Researchers believe the water itself held deep spiritual importance. Across prehistoric Europe, rivers, lakes, springs, and wetlands frequently became places of ritual. Unlike temples built from stone, these natural places served as sacred landscapes where people communicated with powers they could not see. Water marked a boundary, neither fully land nor fully sky. It was a place of transition, perhaps a doorway between worlds. At Flag Fen, each bronze object may have carried prayers, expressions of gratitude, or requests for protection that were never written down. The well and surrounding marsh also preserved something rarely seen at archaeological sites: wood. Normally, timber disappears within a few centuries. Here, the oxygen-poor wet soil prevented decay. Ancient posts remained standing. Fragments of platforms survived. Even footprints and plant remains endured beneath the mud. Together, they created one of the most complete pictures of Bronze Age life ever recovered in Britain. It was as though the marsh itself had become a giant archive, protecting organic materials that would have vanished almost anywhere else. The people who built Flag Fen left behind no written language. Everything archaeologists know comes from careful excavation, the arrangement of the timbers, the position of each artifact, the chemistry of the soil, even pollen trapped beneath the ancient water. Each clue adds another small piece to a story spanning more than 30 centuries. Yet many questions remain unanswered. Why were some weapons broken before being offered? Why did the rituals continue for generations? And why was this particular stretch of wetland considered sacred while countless others were not? The silence of the marsh offers no explanation. Standing at Flagfen today, it is difficult to imagine the ancient landscape. The water has largely disappeared. The reeds no longer surround the wooden causeway. Birdsong has replaced the sounds of Bronze Age communities gathering beside the marsh. But beneath the earth, the memory remains. A sword lowered slowly into dark water, ripples spreading across the surface, a final glimpse of polished bronze, before it vanished forever beneath the reeds. No audience, no monument, only faith. Thousands of years later, archaeologists lifted those same offerings back into the light, not to complete the ritual, but to understand it. And although the people who stood beside that sacred water are long gone, their quiet acts of devotion still endure, hidden for millennia beneath the marsh, waiting patiently for history to find them once again. The palace where archaeologists found an ancient perfume factory. Someone was making perfume here, nearly 4,000 years ago, not for a queen, not for an emperor, but inside a palace that disappeared from history. The fragrance itself is long gone. The flowers have turned to dust. The oils have vanished. Yet somehow, the workshop remained. Its stone presses, its mixing bowls, its clay vessels, even traces of the ingredients once blended by ancient hands. For thousands of years, the rooms lay buried beneath the hills of Cyprus, until archaeologists uncovered what may be one of the oldest known perfume factories ever discovered. The site is called Pyrgos Mavraki. It lies on the southern coast of Cyprus, overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. During the Middle Bronze Age, around 2000 BC, this settlement was far more than a small village. It was a thriving industrial center where craftsmen worked with copper, olive oil, textiles, wine, and fragrant plants. Its position along ancient trade routes connected Egypt, the Levant, Anatolia, and the Aegean world. Merchants carrying valuable goods crossed the sea, bringing new materials and new ideas. Among the many industries flourishing here, one produced something almost invisible: perfume. When archaeologists excavated the palace complex, they expected to find evidence of administration and daily life. Instead, they uncovered a remarkable series of rooms equipped with everything needed to manufacture aromatic oils: large stone mortars, grinding tools, mixing basins, funnels, clay storage jars, distillation equipment, heating installations. The arrangement suggested an organized production process rather than occasional household activity. This was not someone experimenting with pleasant scents. It was a carefully planned workshop. Nearby, researchers recovered tiny traces of ancient botanical remains, seeds, plant fragments, residues absorbed into ceramic vessels. Scientific analysis identified ingredients that would have produced rich, fragrant oils: coriander, bay leaves, bitter almonds, myrtle, lavender, pine resin, anise, perhaps even cinnamon imported from distant lands through long trading networks. These were not random plants gathered from nearby fields. Many carried both practical and symbolic value throughout the ancient Mediterranean. Creating perfume required remarkable patience. Flowers and herbs were carefully harvested at the right season. Some were crushed into fine pastes. Others were gently heated in olive oil. Certain ingredients needed repeated infusion over many days before their fragrance fully entered the oil. The final mixture was filtered, stored inside ceramic containers, and sealed for transport. Without modern chemistry, ancient craftsmen had already mastered surprisingly sophisticated methods of extracting natural aromas. Why invest so much effort? Because perfume in the Bronze Age was far more than a luxury. It accompanied religious ceremonies, anointed kings, honored the dead, protected skin from the dry Mediterranean climate, masked unpleasant odors, marked celebrations, and perhaps most importantly, it became a valuable trade commodity. A small ceramic bottle filled with scented oil could travel hundreds of kilometers aboard merchant ships. Its fragrance carried the identity of Cyprus across the ancient world. Pyrgos Mavraki itself reflects the growing complexity of Bronze Age society. Copper smelting took place nearby. Wine was produced in large quantities. Olive oil flowed through carefully designed storage systems. Textile production occupied other workshops. The perfume factory formed just one part of a remarkably organized economic center. Rather than isolated villages surviving from harvest to harvest, Places like Pyrgos reveal communities capable of specialized industries, international trade, and advanced technical knowledge centuries before the rise of classical Greece. Then, everything changed. Around 1850 BC, a powerful earthquake struck the region. Walls collapsed. Roofs gave way. Fires spread through parts of the settlement. The perfume workshop was suddenly abandoned. The vessels remained where they had fallen. Grinding stones lay beside unfinished work. Collapsed masonry sealed many of the rooms beneath layers of debris. Ironically, the disaster that destroyed the workshop also preserved it. Hidden beneath the ruins, its equipment survived while centuries passed overhead. Modern researchers have even attempted to recreate some of the ancient perfumes using the archaeological evidence. By combining the same plants identified at Pyrgos and following techniques suggested by the excavated equipment, they produced fragrances that people may have recognized nearly 4,000 years ago. The exact scents can never be known with complete certainty. But for a brief moment, the invisible world of Bronze Age Cyprus became tangible again. The ancient city hidden beneath centuries of flooded farmland. For thousands of years, it looked like nothing more than another hill rising above the plains of northern Syria. Fields surrounded it. Farmers crossed its slopes. Rain fell. Floodwaters came and went. Each season left behind another layer of earth. Then another. Then another. Slowly, an entire city disappeared beneath the land itself. Not because of war. Not because of fire. But because time buried it one generation at a time. When archaeologists finally began to excavate the mound, they expected to uncover another ancient settlement. Instead, they uncovered a forgotten royal capital. Palaces emerged from the soil. Temple walls followed. Ancient streets slowly came back into the light. The city was called Urkesh, and it had remained hidden beneath centuries of accumulated farmland. The site is known today as Tel Mozan, located in northeastern Syria near the foothills of the Taurus Mountains. Archaeologists have identified it as the ancient city of Urkesh, one of the earliest capitals of the Hurrian civilization during the 3rd millennium BC. Long before the Assyrians built their empire, Urkesh had already become a powerful center of government, trade, and religion. Its location placed it between the fertile plains of Mesopotamia and the resource-rich mountains to the north, allowing merchants, travelers, and ideas to move through the city for centuries. Unlike many ancient cities, Urkesh did not vanish after a single disaster. It disappeared slowly. Generation after generation rebuilt homes over older buildings. Mud brick walls crumbled into dust. Abandoned houses collapsed. Seasonal floods spread fresh soil across the ruins. Wind covered them a little more every year. Over thousands of years, the city became a great archaeological mound known as a tell. What appeared to be an ordinary hill was actually an entire city hidden beneath layer after layer of history. As excavations continued, the true scale of Urkesh became clear. Massive defensive walls surrounded the settlement. Large courtyards connected important buildings. Storerooms, workshops, and administrative rooms emerged one after another. Near the center stood a remarkable royal palace. Even after more than 4,000 years, its stone foundations and thick mud brick walls remained standing. Clay ceilings discovered throughout the palace showed that officials carefully managed trade, supplies, and royal property. The discoveries revealed a kingdom that was far more organized than archaeologists had once imagined. One structure continues to puzzle researchers more than any other. Hidden beneath a temple complex was a deep underground chamber known as the Abai. Stone steps disappeared into darkness. Its purpose remains unknown. Some archaeologists believe it played a role in ceremonies connected with the underworld. Others suggest it was used for rituals honoring ancestral spirits. No inscription explains why it was built. The chamber survives. Its meaning does not. Thousands of clay seal impressions uncovered throughout Urkesh revealed another side of life inside the city. Officials used carved cylinder seals to secure doors, storage jars, and valuable goods. Many displayed lions, priests, mountains, and mythical creatures unlike those found elsewhere in Mesopotamia. These tiny impressions became the signatures of an ancient government that disappeared thousands of years ago. Urkesh flourished because it stood between two worlds. To the south lay the great cities of Mesopotamia. To the north rose the mountains rich in timber, copper, and stone. Merchants carried valuable goods through the city from every direction. Trade brought wealth, ideas, and influence. For centuries, Urkesh remained one of the region's most important crossroads. Eventually, the city began to fade. Trade routes shifted. New kingdoms rose to power. The palace was abandoned. The temples fell silent. Roofs collapsed. Floodwaters carried fresh soil across empty streets. The earth slowly reclaimed everything, until only a quiet hill remained. Today, much of Urkesh still lies beneath Tel Mozan. Every excavation uncovers another building, another street, another piece of a civilization that nearly vanished from history. Perhaps that is what makes Urkesh so remarkable. It was never truly lost. It simply disappeared beneath the land that had once allowed it to flourish, waiting beneath centuries of flooded farmland until history finally uncovered it once again. The palace buried beneath the hills of northern Iraq. For centuries, it lay hidden beneath a quiet hillside in northern Iraq. Dust settled over it. Grass covered the stones. Travelers passed nearby without ever knowing what rested below. The palace disappeared so completely that even its name was forgotten. Then an unexpected discovery changed everything, not by digging blindly into the earth, but by looking down from the sky. Ancient roads appeared. Faint outlines of buried buildings emerged. Archaeologists followed the clues. Soon walls began to appear. Columns, courtyards, fragments of fine pottery. What they uncovered was the forgotten city of Kalatga Darband, a place that had remained hidden for more than 2,000 years. The site is known as Kalatga Darband, located in the Zagros foothills of northern Iraq between the ancient worlds of Mesopotamia and Persia. Archaeologists believe the city flourished during the Hellenistic period, shortly after the campaigns of Alexander the Great in the late 4th century BC. Its position overlooked an important mountain pass that connected the fertile plains of Mesopotamia with the Iranian plateau. Anyone moving through the pass would have crossed its territory, making the settlement both wealthy and strategically important. Although local people had long known of ancient ruins in the area, the city's true extent remained hidden beneath layers of soil and vegetation. Its modern discovery began with photographs taken decades earlier by American reconnaissance satellites during the Cold War. Those images revealed strange geometric patterns beneath the landscape, patterns that did not belong to nature. Years later, archaeologists returned to investigate them on the ground. What they found exceeded expectations. Excavations uncovered stone buildings spread across the hillside. Large walls outlined impressive structures. Courtyards connected different sections of the settlement. Fragments of roof tiles, glass vessels, and decorated pottery appeared throughout the site. Each discovery pointed toward a prosperous city rather than a small frontier village. The settlement had been carefully planned, built to last. One of the most remarkable discoveries was a large building that archaeologists believe may have served as a palace or an important administrative complex. Its substantial stone foundations suggested a structure built for officials or wealthy elites. Nearby, excavators uncovered fragments of finely carved architectural decoration along with evidence of large public spaces. Although much of the upper structure has disappeared, its scale hints at the importance the building once held within the city. The discoveries also revealed strong Greek influence. Statues of the gods, Persephone and Adonis, were recovered from the site. Greek-style roof tiles covered many of the buildings. Wine presses suggested local production on a significant scale. Together, these finds show how Hellenistic culture spread far beyond Greece itself following Alexander's campaigns. Yet the city was never entirely Greek. Local traditions continued alongside these new influences, creating a unique blend of cultures. Kalatga Darband stood along one of the region's most important travel routes. Merchants carried goods through the mountain pass. Soldiers marched between empires. Caravans stopped to rest before continuing their journeys east or west. The city's prosperity depended on movement, trade, travel, and the constant flow of people across northern Iraq. Eventually, those routes changed. Political power shifted. New cities rose elsewhere. The buildings were abandoned. Roofs collapsed. Walls slowly disappeared beneath the hillside. Wind carried dust across the empty streets. Winter rains covered the ruins a little more each year, until the city itself became part of the landscape. Today, excavations at Kalatga Darband are still revealing new discoveries. Large parts of the ancient settlement remain buried beneath the surrounding hills. Each excavation season uncovers another piece of its forgotten past. Another building, another street, another clue to the people who once lived there. Perhaps that is what makes Kalatga Darband so remarkable. It was never completely erased. It simply waited beneath the hills, hidden in plain sight, until ancient satellite photographs and modern archaeology brought a forgotten palace and an entire lost city back into the light. The forgotten temple where priests worshipped beneath open skies. For nearly 2,000 years, the mountain kept its secret. Rain washed over the stones. Pine trees spread across the hillside. Wildflowers grew between fallen columns. The voices of priests faded into silence, until archaeologists began clearing the earth, stone by stone, wall by wall. An ancient sanctuary slowly returned to daylight. Not inside a city, not beside a palace, but high in the mountains of western Turkey, a place where worship happened beneath the open sky. The sanctuary is known as Labranda, hidden among the forested hills of ancient Korea in southwestern Turkey. Long before modern roads crossed these mountains, pilgrims climbed narrow paths to reach this sacred place. The sanctuary was dedicated to Zeus Labrandos, a local form of the Greek god Zeus who carried a double-headed axe known as the Labris. For centuries, believers made the journey uphill, seeking blessings, offering sacrifices, taking part in festivals that filled the mountain with people. Unlike many ancient temples built inside crowded cities, Labranda stood in remarkable isolation. The mountains surrounded it on every side. Fresh springs flowed from the rocks nearby. Towering granite cliffs overlooked the sanctuary. The setting itself became part of the experience. Visitors left the ordinary world behind and entered sacred ground. Most of the sanctuary we see today was constructed during the 4th century BC under the rulers Mausolus and Idrius of Korea. They transformed the mountain sanctuary into one of the region's most important religious centers. Stone terraces were carved into the hillside. Grand stairways connected different levels. Monumental buildings appeared beside older places of worship. The sanctuary grew without losing its sacred purpose. At its heart stood the Temple of Zeus. Unlike enclosed places of worship used by many later religions, much of the religious life at Labranda unfolded beneath the open sky. Ceremonies filled the courtyards. Offerings were presented at outdoor altars. Smoke from sacrifices drifted into the mountain air. Thousands of people could gather without ever entering a roofed building. The landscape itself became part of every ritual. Archaeologists have uncovered impressive banquet halls throughout the sanctuary. These were not ordinary dining rooms. After major religious festivals, large communal feasts brought priests, officials, and pilgrims together. Religion here was more than prayer. It was shared meals, shared ceremonies, shared traditions that strengthened the entire community. Excavations have also revealed beautifully carved columns, marble inscriptions, stone roads, and carefully engineered water systems. Many inscriptions describe donations made by wealthy visitors. Others record building projects that expanded the sanctuary over generations. Each discovery shows that Labranda remained an active religious center for hundreds of years, not because of a single ruler, but because countless people continued returning to the mountain. As political power shifted across Anatolia, the sanctuary slowly lost its importance. Traditional pagan worship declined. The festivals ended. The mountain paths became quiet. Without constant care, roofs collapsed. Columns fell. Earth slowly covered the buildings. Century after century, nature reclaimed what people had built, until only scattered stones remained visible among the trees. Modern excavations, led for decades by archaeologists from Sweden and Turkey, continue to uncover new parts of the sanctuary: hidden staircases, ancient fountains, fragments of statues. Every season reveals another piece of the mountain's forgotten history, showing that much of Labranda still lies beneath the soil, waiting. Perhaps that is what makes Labranda so unforgettable. It was never meant to separate people from the natural world. The mountains were part of the temple. The wind was part of the ceremony. The open sky became its ceiling. And although the priests are long gone, the mountain still stands, watching over the sanctuary, just as it has for more than 2,000 years. The world's first permanent town. For thousands of years, people kept returning to the same place. They built homes, raised families, buried their dead. When old houses crumbled, new ones rose above them. Again and again. The settlement never truly disappeared. It simply grew taller, layer by layer, century after century, until an entire ancient town became a hill. When archaeologists began excavating the mound, they uncovered something few believed possible: stone houses, massive walls, and a mysterious tower that had stood for nearly 10,000 years. The place was called Jericho, and it may be the world's first permanent town. Jericho lies in the Jordan Valley, near one of the oldest natural springs in the region. Long before kingdoms, writing, or metal tools appeared, people settled here because fresh water flowed throughout the year. That single spring transformed an otherwise dry landscape into a place where farming, hunting, and daily life could flourish. Generation after generation chose not to move on. They stayed. Archaeologists believe people first settled at Jericho around 9000 BC during the pre-pottery Neolithic period. That makes the site one of the oldest continuously occupied places ever discovered. Instead of temporary camps, the people of Jericho built permanent homes using mud brick and stone. For perhaps the first time in human history, entire communities began living together in one place throughout the year. It marked a turning point, not only for Jericho, but for civilization itself. One discovery continues to astonish archaeologists more than any other: a massive stone tower, nearly 9 meters tall, built more than 10,000 years ago. A stone staircase climbed through its center. Its builders worked without metal tools, without wheeled vehicles, without written plans. Yet they created one of the oldest monumental structures ever found. Exactly why it was built remains uncertain. Nearby stood an equally impressive stone wall surrounding part of the settlement. For many years, archaeologists believed it served as one of the world's earliest defensive walls. Others have suggested it may also have protected the town from seasonal flooding or landslides flowing down the nearby hills. The debate continues. The wall survives. Its original purpose does not. Excavations uncovered far more than buildings. Inside several houses, archaeologists found carefully buried human remains beneath the floors. Some skulls had been covered with plaster and shaped to recreate the faces of the dead. Shells were placed where the eyes had once been. These remarkable discoveries suggest that the people of Jericho honored their ancestors in ways that still puzzle researchers today. Their homes were places for both the living and the remembered. As the centuries passed, Jericho continued to change. Old buildings were replaced. New walls appeared. Different cultures settled the area. Empires rose and fell around it. Yet people kept returning to the same spring that had first drawn settlers thousands of years earlier. The town endured while countless others vanished. Today, the ruins of ancient Jericho remain buried within a large archaeological mound known as Tel es-Sultan. Each excavation uncovers another layer of its remarkable past. Another home. Another courtyard. Another piece of humanity's earliest chapter. Much of the ancient settlement still lies beneath the earth, waiting. Perhaps that is what makes Jericho so extraordinary. It was never simply another ancient town. It was a place where people stopped wandering, where communities took root, where permanent life began to reshape the human story. And beneath the ruins of its ancient tower, that story is still being uncovered, one layer at a time. The ancient mine that changed civilization. For thousands of years, it looked like an ordinary stretch of countryside in eastern England. Grass covered the ground. Wildflowers bloomed each spring. Nothing hinted at what lay beneath. Until archaeologists began exploring the landscape, one deep shaft appeared, then another, then dozens more. Soon it became clear they were not looking at a single mine. They were standing above one of the largest prehistoric mining complexes ever discovered, a place where people climbed deep underground long before metal tools transformed the world. The place is known as Grimes Graves. Grimes Graves is located in Norfolk, eastern England, where more than 400 ancient mining shafts spread across the landscape. At first glance, the site resembles a series of shallow depressions scattered across open fields. But beneath the surface lies an extraordinary network of tunnels dug by Neolithic miners more than 5,000 years ago. Long before bronze or iron became common, people came here for one reason: flint, one of the most valuable materials of the prehistoric world. To reach the best quality stone, miners dug narrow shafts as deep as 12 meters into the chalk beneath the earth. At the bottom, they carved out tunnels leading in several directions. Working by the light of small stone lamps, they followed thin layers of black flint hidden inside the white chalk. The work was slow, demanding, and often dangerous. Yet generation after generation returned to the same underground maze. Perhaps the most remarkable part of the story is how they accomplished it. There were no steel picks, no machinery, no explosives. Instead, archaeologists discovered tools made from the antlers of red deer. These antler picks were strong enough to break through the soft chalk while allowing miners to carefully free large blocks of flint. Many of those tools were left behind, still resting where they were dropped thousands of years ago. The flint itself was worth the effort. When carefully shaped, it produced blades sharper than many early metal tools. Axes, knives, arrowheads, scrapers. Everyday life depended on it. Forests could be cleared. Animals could be butchered. Wood could be worked with remarkable precision. Before bronze transformed technology, flint helped build the Neolithic world. Excavations have shown that Grimes Graves was far more than a local quarry. Stone taken from these mines traveled across much of Britain. Finished tools have been found many kilometers from their source, showing that extensive trade networks already existed long before written history reached these islands. The mines connected distant communities through exchange, craftsmanship, and shared knowledge. One discovery continues to puzzle archaeologists. At the bottom of one abandoned shaft, excavators found carefully placed deposits that included a chalk figure, pottery, and the remains of a dog. Some researchers believe these were ritual offerings made before a mine was abandoned. Others suggest they marked the end of a working shaft or honored beliefs now lost to history. No written records survive. The objects remain. Their meaning does not. Eventually, the mines fell silent. Bronze tools became more common. New technologies spread across Britain. The shafts were abandoned. Some slowly collapsed. Others filled with earth. Grass covered the landscape. The entrances disappeared, until the mines themselves became part of the countryside. Today, archaeologists continue to study Grimes Graves to better understand the lives of Britain's earliest mining communities. Visitors can descend into one reconstructed shaft and stand where Neolithic miners once worked by the glow of simple lamps. The tunnels are narrow. The air is cool. The silence is complete. It is difficult to imagine hundreds of people digging beneath the earth with nothing more than antler tools and determination. Perhaps that is what makes Grimes Graves so extraordinary. It was never a city, or a temple, or a royal palace. It was a place of work, a place where ordinary people descended into darkness to recover a stone that helped shape an entire civilization. And beneath the quiet fields of England, their ancient footsteps still echo through the tunnels they left behind. The buried Roman town before the flood. For centuries, the city overlooked one of the great rivers of the ancient world. Merchants filled its streets. Soldiers crossed its bridges. Artists covered the floors of wealthy homes with brilliant mosaics. Life flourished here. Then the city faded. Its buildings collapsed. Earth slowly buried its streets. History almost forgot it. Just as archaeologists began bringing it back to light, another threat appeared. Not war, not invasion, but rising water. The ruins of an ancient Roman town stood directly in the path of a modern reservoir. There was only one question left. Could history be saved before the flood arrived? The ancient city is known as Zeugma, located on the banks of the Euphrates River in southeastern Turkey. Founded during the Hellenistic period and later expanded under Roman rule, Zeugma occupied one of the most important river crossings in the region. Its very name means bridge or crossing. Anyone traveling between the eastern provinces and the Mediterranean often passed through the city. Trade brought enormous wealth, and that wealth transformed Zeugma into one of the finest Roman cities in the east. The city's prosperity could be seen inside its homes. Affluent families built spacious villas overlooking the Euphrates. Marble courtyards welcomed visitors. Fountains cooled the summer air. But the greatest treasures were hidden beneath people's feet. Room after room was decorated with elaborate mosaic floors. Each tiny stone was carefully placed by hand. Together they formed scenes from Greek mythology, daily life, and the natural world with astonishing detail. For centuries, those mosaics remained buried beneath collapsed buildings. They survived earthquakes, changing empires, and the slow passage of time. When archaeologists finally uncovered them, the colors were still remarkably vivid. Faces seemed almost alive. Animals appeared ready to move. The craftsmanship rivaled the finest mosaics found anywhere in the Roman Empire. One mosaic became especially famous. Known today as the Gypsy Girl, it actually depicts a mysterious figure whose true identity remains uncertain. Large dark eyes stare directly at the viewer. The expression is impossible to forget. Some scholars believe the figure represents a Maenad, a follower of the god Dionysus. Others have proposed different interpretations. No inscription reveals the answer. The gaze remains. The mystery endures. In the late 20th century, modern construction placed Zeugma in unexpected danger. The Beresic Dam project would create a vast reservoir across the Euphrates. Parts of the ancient city would disappear beneath the rising water forever. Archaeologists from Turkey and around the world rushed to excavate as much as possible before the reservoir filled. It became one of the largest archaeological rescue projects ever undertaken. Every day mattered. Teams worked at extraordinary speed. Entire villas were uncovered. Mosaics were carefully lifted from the ground. Walls were documented. Artifacts were packed and transported to safety. Some parts of the city could not be saved. As the reservoir slowly filled, ancient streets vanished beneath the water. Sections of Zeugma disappeared once again, this time beneath a modern lake. Even so, much of its remarkable history survived. Thousands of artifacts were rescued. Many of the finest mosaics are now preserved in the Zeugma Mosaic Museum, where visitors can admire works created nearly 2,000 years ago. Meanwhile, large sections of the ancient city remain both on land and beneath the waters of the reservoir. Archaeologists continue to study what was saved and wonder about what still lies hidden. Perhaps that is what makes Zeugma so unforgettable. Most ancient cities disappear because time slowly erases them. Zeugma faced a different fate. It was uncovered, only to be threatened once again. Yet through one extraordinary rescue effort, countless pieces of its story survived. Beneath the waters of the Euphrates, and inside its timeless mosaics, the ancient Roman town continues to tell its story. The forgotten kingdom buried beneath the sands of Lambayeque. For centuries, the desert guarded its secrets. Wind swept across the dunes. Sand buried ancient walls. Entire pyramids disappeared beneath the landscape. From a distance, the mounds looked like ordinary hills. Few imagined they concealed the remains of one of South America's greatest forgotten kingdoms. Then, the excavations began. Layers of sand were carefully removed. Ancient adobe walls emerged. Royal tombs appeared beneath the earth. Inside them lay gold, unlike anything archaeologists expected. Masks, jewelry, ceremonial knives, treasures untouched for centuries. The forgotten kingdom of Lambayeque had begun to tell its story once again. The Lambayeque culture, also known as the Sican civilization, flourished along Peru's northern coast between about AD 750 and 1375. It developed after the decline of the Moche civilization and became one of the most influential societies in ancient Peru before the rise of the Inca. Its people built enormous ceremonial centers across the desert. Among the largest was the vast complex now known as Baton Grande. Dozens of adobe pyramids once dominated the landscape. Many still stand beneath centuries of accumulated sand. The kingdom grew prosperous through remarkable engineering. Although the surrounding region was dry, the Lambayeque people constructed long irrigation canals that carried water across the desert. Fields of maize, beans, squash, and cotton flourished where little could naturally grow. Fishing along the Pacific coast provided additional wealth. Trade connected the kingdom with distant regions, bringing exotic shells, rare stones, and valuable metals from hundreds of kilometers away. The desert became the foundation of a thriving civilization. The rulers of Lambayeque displayed extraordinary skill in working precious metals. Their craftsmen produced elaborate objects from gold, silver, and copper alloys. Masks with wide almond-shaped eyes covered the faces of elite burials. Large, crescent-shaped headdresses gleamed in the sunlight during ceremonies. Necklaces, ear ornaments, and ceremonial knives reflected both remarkable artistry and immense political power. Many of these objects remain among the finest examples of ancient metalworking ever discovered in the Americas. One of the greatest discoveries came during excavations of royal tombs buried deep beneath the pyramids. Archaeologists uncovered high-ranking individuals surrounded by enormous quantities of offerings. Gold ornaments covered their bodies. Ceramic vessels filled the chambers. Sacrificial attendants had been buried nearby, suggesting they accompanied powerful leaders into the afterlife. Each tomb revealed a society with complex religious beliefs and carefully organized rituals surrounding death. Religion shaped nearly every part of Lambayeque life. Many artworks depict a mysterious figure known today as the Sican deity. The being is often shown with large wing-like eyes and an elaborate headdress. Its image appears repeatedly on masks, ceremonial vessels, and metal ornaments. Researchers believe it represented a powerful supernatural protector connected with kingship, fertility, and the spiritual world. Without written records, however, Much about these beliefs remains unknown. Around the 14th century, the kingdom entered a period of decline. Environmental changes, including severe flooding linked to El Niño events, may have damaged agriculture and weakened political authority. Evidence also suggests that some ceremonial centers were intentionally burned before being abandoned. Eventually, the expanding Chimu kingdom absorbed the region. The Great Pyramids fell silent. Wind carried sand across abandoned temples. The desert slowly reclaimed its cities. Modern excavations have transformed our understanding of the Lambayakwe civilization. Archaeologists continue uncovering tombs, workshops, temples, and ceremonial plazas buried beneath the sands of northern Peru. Every discovery reveals new details about a society whose achievements were once overshadowed by better-known civilizations such as the Maya and the Inca. Much of the ancient kingdom still remains hidden beneath the desert, waiting beneath the dunes. Perhaps that is what makes Lambayakwe so remarkable. Its monuments were never carved into mountains, nor built from stone. They were shaped from earth itself. The forgotten cave church city hidden beneath the cliffs. For centuries, the valley appeared almost untouched. Soft volcanic cliffs rose above the landscape. Strange rock towers stood against the horizon. From a distance, they seemed shaped only by wind and time. But hidden inside those silent formations, doors opened into darkness. Passages stretched deep into the stone. Entire churches emerged from the cliffs. Walls glowed with colorful paintings that had survived for nearly 1,000 years. The mountain itself had become a city, a place where faith was carved directly into the earth. Today, it is known as Gurmi. Located in the Cappadocia region of central Turkey, Gurmi is unlike almost any other historic settlement in the world. Millions of years ago, volcanic eruptions blanketed the region with layers of soft volcanic ash. Over time, the ash hardened into a rock known as tuff. Wind and rain slowly sculpted the landscape into towering pillars, narrow valleys, and dramatic cliffs. People eventually discovered that this unusual stone was soft enough to carve with simple tools, yet strong enough to remain standing for centuries. Nature had already built the walls. Human hands simply hollowed them out. By the 4th century AD, Christian monks began settling in these quiet valleys. Seeking solitude away from the growing cities of the Byzantine Empire, they transformed the rock into places of worship. Simple caves became chapels. Chapels expanded into monasteries. Entire religious communities slowly appeared inside the cliffs. Unlike traditional churches built from stone blocks, these sanctuaries were carved directly into the mountains themselves. Every room was created by removing rock rather than stacking it. Inside many of the churches, visitors still find remarkable frescoes covering the walls and ceilings. Painted between the 10th and 12th centuries, these artworks portray scenes from the life of Christ, biblical prophets, saints, and angels. Deep red, rich blue, golden ochre. Many of the colors have survived, despite centuries of exposure. Some paintings were damaged during periods of iconoclasm, when religious images were intentionally defaced. Yet countless others remain astonishingly well preserved. The darkness of the caves protected them from sunlight and weather for generations. Gurmi was far more than a collection of isolated churches. It was a thriving community. Families carved homes into the cliffs. Storage rooms held grain and wine. Kitchens, stables, workshops, and chapels existed side by side. Fresh water flowed through carefully constructed channels. The landscape itself became a living city where nearly every structure was hidden inside the rock. To outsiders, the valley revealed very little. Life unfolded quietly behind stone walls. Throughout the Byzantine period, the remote valleys offered a measure of protection during times of conflict. When armies moved across Anatolia, local communities could retreat into the surrounding cave complexes. Nearby underground cities, including Derinkuyu and Kaymakla, provided additional refuge when danger approached. Although Gurmi itself was never entirely isolated from history, its rugged landscape helped preserve both its people and their traditions for centuries. As political and religious conditions changed, many of the cave churches gradually fell out of use. Communities moved elsewhere. Monasteries were abandoned. Dust settled across once busy sanctuaries. The frescoes faded beneath layers of soot and time. For generations, many of the churches remained largely forgotten outside the local region. The cliffs quietly protected their secrets. Modern archaeological work and careful conservation have revealed the extraordinary scale of the settlement. Dozens of churches have been documented, Hundreds of carved rooms continue to be studied. Every excavation uncovers new passages, hidden chambers, and traces of daily life preserved within the volcanic stone. Researchers continue learning how entire communities adapted to one of the world's most unusual landscapes. Much of Gurmi still holds unanswered questions. Perhaps that is what makes Gurmi so unforgettable. Most sacred cities reach toward the sky with towering walls and soaring domes. Gurmi chose another path. Its churches disappeared into the mountains. Its streets blended into the valleys. Its faith was carved into the living rock itself. And even today, as sunlight falls across the quiet cliffs of Cappadocia, the forgotten cave churches continue to whisper the story of a city that was never built, only revealed from within. The ancient fortress that protected a kingdom no one remembers. Altın Tepe lies in eastern Turkey, overlooking the broad plains of the upper Euphrates. The fortress was built during the 8th century BC by the Kingdom of Urartu, a powerful Iron Age civilization that flourished around Lake Van. From this elevated position, its defenders could monitor trade routes, nearby settlements, and anyone approaching through the surrounding valleys. It was more than a military outpost. It was a symbol of royal authority at the western edge of the kingdom. The Urartians were remarkable builders. Instead of relying solely on natural defenses, they constructed massive fortresses on rocky hills throughout their territory. Enormous stone blocks formed the foundations. Above them rose mud brick walls that once reached impressive heights. These strongholds protected the kingdom against rival powers, particularly the expanding Assyrian Empire to the south. Altın Tepe became one important link in this carefully planned defensive network. Excavations have revealed that life inside the fortress extended far beyond warfare. Archaeologists uncovered temples, administrative buildings, storerooms, workshops, and residential quarters. Officials managed supplies arriving from nearby villages. Craftsmen produced tools and decorative objects. Priests performed religious ceremonies within sacred precincts. Soldiers guarded the walls while ordinary families carried out their daily routines inside the safety of the fortress. It functioned as both a military center and a thriving provincial town. Among the site's most remarkable discoveries is an impressive temple dedicated to the Urartian supreme god, Haldi. The structure once stood at the heart of the fortress, reflecting the close relationship between religion and royal power. Stone foundations still outline its original plan. Fragments of painted plaster suggest that the walls were once brightly decorated. Ceremonies performed here reinforced the king's authority, reminding both soldiers and civilians that divine protection was believed to stand behind the kingdom itself. Nearby, archaeologists also uncovered a royal-style audience hall supported by large columns. Although only portions survive, the building demonstrates the architectural sophistication of the Urartians. Decorated stone bases, carefully planned courtyards, and advanced construction techniques reveal influences shared with neighboring civilizations while maintaining a distinctly Urartian style. These were not isolated mountain tribes. They governed a highly organized state with skilled architects, engineers, and administrators. One discovery surprised researchers more than expected. Fragments of colorful wall paintings were found inside several buildings. Unlike the weathered stone ruins visible today, the fortress was once filled with vivid reds, blues, blacks, and whites. Animals, geometric patterns, and ceremonial designs decorated important rooms. The fortress that now appears gray and silent was once alive with color and movement. Its appearance would have been dramatically different from the ruins visitors see today. During the late 7th century BC, the kingdom of Urartu entered a period of decline. Pressure from invading peoples, shifting regional alliances, and the growing power of neighboring kingdoms gradually weakened the state. Eventually, many of its great fortresses were abandoned. Altın Tepe was no exception. Its walls collapsed. Its temples fell silent. Mud bricks slowly returned to earth. Centuries of wind and rain softened the outlines of one of the kingdom's proudest strongholds. Modern excavations have brought much of Altın Tepe back into the light. Archaeologists continue studying its buildings, inscriptions, pottery, and fortifications to better understand a civilization that once rivaled the greatest kingdoms of the ancient Near East. Every stone recovered adds another piece to the forgotten history of Urartu, a kingdom that shaped an entire region before disappearing from memory. Perhaps that is what makes Altın Tepe so remarkable. Many ancient fortresses protected kingdoms whose names still fill history books. Altın Tepe guarded one that almost vanished from human memory. Its walls survived. Its temples endured. Its stones continued watching over the valley long after the kingdom itself had disappeared. And from the quiet hilltops of eastern Turkey, the forgotten fortress still stands, keeping watch over a civilization that refuses to be completely lost. The cliff dwellings hidden inside a mountain, a village carved directly into volcanic stone. The people who lived here left no towering pyramids or massive temples. Instead, they built a civilization that became part of the mountain itself. Today, this remarkable place is known as Bandelier. Bandelier National Monument lies in northern New Mexico, where deep canyons cut through layers of soft volcanic tuff formed by an enormous eruption more than 1 million years ago. Over time, wind and water carved the landscape into steep cliffs filled with natural cavities. Centuries later, the ancestral Pueblo people transformed many of these hollows into homes. Using simple stone tools, they enlarged the openings and connected them with masonry walls built from volcanic rock. Nature provided the framework. Human skill turned it into a thriving settlement. Between approximately AD 1150 and 1550, thousands of people lived throughout the Bandelier region. Rather than concentrating in a single city, communities occupied villages spread across mesas, canyon floors, and cliff faces. The cliff dwellings, known today as cavates, offered shelter from weather while remaining close to fertile land along the stream below. Families farmed maize, beans, and squash on nearby fields. Wild plants were gathered from the surrounding forests. Hunting supplemented their diet throughout the changing seasons. Life followed the rhythm of the landscape itself. The caves were far more sophisticated than they first appear. Many contained smooth walls blackened by ancient cooking fires. Small niches were carved into the stone for storage. Ceilings still preserve the holes where wooden beams once supported additional rooms built outside the cave entrances. Some homes extended several stories high, combining carved chambers with carefully constructed stone buildings. What survives today is only part of what once existed. Much of the wooden architecture disappeared long ago. Scattered throughout the settlement are circular ceremonial structures known as kivas. Partially built below ground, these spaces served as places for religious ceremonies, community gatherings, and important social events. Their exact rituals remain known only through the traditions preserved by modern Pueblo communities. Archaeologists study these structures carefully, recognizing that they were central to both the spiritual and communal life of the people who lived here. The kivas remind us that Bandelier was more than a collection of homes. It was a living society bound together by shared beliefs and traditions. One of the site's greatest strengths was its natural setting. The steep canyon walls provided protection. Fresh water flowed year-round through Frijoles Creek. The surrounding forests supplied timber, game, and edible plants. Volcanic tuff was soft enough to carve but durable enough to preserve homes for centuries. Rather than reshaping the landscape, the inhabitants learned how to work with it. Their architecture blended almost seamlessly into the cliffs. Even today, many dwellings remain difficult to spot until viewed from just the right angle. Around the 16th century, however, life at Bandelier began to change. A combination of prolonged drought, shifting climate, population movements, and social changes encouraged many communities to relocate. Rather than disappearing, the descendants of these people moved toward larger Pueblo villages along the Rio Grande. Many of today's Pueblo nations trace their ancestry to these earlier settlements. The canyon was gradually left behind. Its homes stood empty once more. When archaeologists began studying Bandelier in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, they discovered a remarkably well-preserved record of daily life. Pottery fragments, stone tools, woven materials, and ancient food remains offered valuable insights into centuries of occupation. Unlike many monumental archaeological sites focused on kings or elites, Bandelier tells the story of ordinary families. Parents preparing meals, children playing near the canyon walls, farmers tending distant fields, communities adapting successfully to a challenging environment for hundreds of years. Perhaps that is what makes Bandelier so remarkable. It was never designed to dominate the landscape. It became part of it. The cliffs were not obstacles to overcome. They became homes. The canyon was not simply a place to live. It became part of the community itself. And as evening, shadows slowly climbed the walls of Bandelier, the silent doorways carved into the volcanic rock still look out across the valley, waiting for the voices that once filled them to return. The forgotten mountain where every cliff became a temple. For centuries, the valley remained almost silent. Steep cliffs rose above narrow fields. Wildflowers covered the hills each spring. From a distance, the mountains appeared untouched. There were no towering cathedrals, no marble temples, no castles standing above the landscape. Then a closer look revealed something extraordinary. Dark openings pierced the cliff faces. Doorways emerged from the rock. Inside them were churches, monasteries, homes, entire sanctuaries carved deep into the mountainside. The cliffs themselves had become places of worship. Today, this forgotten landscape is known as Soğanlı Valley. Hidden within the Cappadocia region of central Turkey, Soğanlı Valley is one of the area's oldest and least crowded rock-cut settlements. Like nearby Gurumi, its landscape was formed millions of years ago when volcanic eruptions blanketed the region in thick layers of ash. Over time, the ash hardened into soft volcanic tuff. Wind and rain carved the cliffs into dramatic formations. Generations of people discovered that the stone could be shaped with simple tools, allowing entire buildings to be carved directly into the mountains. Nature created the canvas. Human hands completed the masterpiece. Christian communities began settling in the valley during the early Byzantine period. By the 9th century, Soğanlı had become an important religious center. Monks carved monasteries into the cliffs. Families established homes nearby. Small farming communities flourished across the fertile valley floor. Unlike bustling cities surrounded by walls, Soğanlı offered isolation. Its quiet landscape became a refuge for prayer, study, and daily life. Faith and survival existed side by side. Throughout the valley, dozens of rock-cut churches still survive. Each one possesses its own character. Some are small and simple, consisting of a single chamber with a modest altar. Others contain multiple rooms connected by narrow passageways. Several churches include domed ceilings carved entirely from solid rock. Even after centuries, the precision of the workmanship remains remarkable. Everything, from columns to arches, was sculpted by removing stone rather than assembling it. The greatest treasures lie inside. Many of the churches preserve Byzantine frescoes painted between the 9th and 13th centuries. Scenes from the life of Christ cover the walls. Saints stand beneath carved arches. Angels stretch across curved ceilings. Deep reds, warm ochres, earthy greens, and faded blues still survive despite centuries of exposure. Although time has softened many details, the paintings continue to convey a sense of quiet devotion. Each church became both a place of worship and a gallery of sacred art. Life in Soğanlı was closely connected to the surrounding landscape. The fertile valley supported vineyards, orchards, and small fields of grain. Water from seasonal streams nourished the crops. Storage rooms carved into the cliffs protected food through harsh winters. Pigeon houses, also carved into the rock, collected valuable fertilizer that enriched nearby farmland. The valley was carefully adapted to meet nearly every need of its inhabitants. Its people did not conquer the landscape. They learned how to live within it. As centuries passed, political changes reshaped Anatolia. Trade routes shifted. Religious communities gradually declined. Many monasteries were abandoned. The carved churches fell silent. Dust gathered across painted walls. Without large cities nearby, Soğanlı slowly disappeared from wider memory. The valley remained largely untouched, preserving much of its original character while more famous settlements attracted growing attention. Modern archaeologists continue studying Soğanlı's churches, dwellings, tombs, and frescoes. Every excavation reveals new details about Byzantine religious life and the remarkable engineering skills of the valley's builders. Unlike monuments raised above the landscape, these structures survived because they became part of the mountain itself. Even today, many chambers remain unexplored or only partially documented. The cliffs may still conceal stories waiting to emerge. Perhaps that is what makes Soğanlı Valley so remarkable. Most sacred places announce themselves with towering walls and soaring spires. Soğanlı chose silence instead. Its temples disappeared into the cliffs. Its monasteries blended with the mountains. Its faith was carved into living stone. And as the evening sun paints the valley in shades of gold, the forgotten necropolis guarded by stone faces. Situated in the Syrian desert, Palmyra occupied one of the most important positions along the ancient caravan routes linking the Mediterranean with Mesopotamia, Persia, and Arabia. Its isolated oasis allowed merchants to rest before continuing across the harsh desert. By the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, Palmyra had become one of Rome's richest eastern cities. Caravans carrying silk, spices, ivory, pearls, glass, and precious metals passed through its gates. Its wealth transformed a desert settlement into a magnificent urban center filled with temples, colonnades, and grand public buildings. Beyond the city walls, another remarkable landscape began: the City of the Dead. Unlike many Roman cemeteries, the people of Palmyra built towering family tombs that rose several stories above the desert floor. These tower tombs served as burial places for generations of the same family. Stone staircases connected multiple levels. Each floor contained rows of burial niches carved into the walls. Rather than simple graves, these were monumental family memorials designed to preserve status and identity long after death. Many towers remained visible across the desert skyline for centuries. The entrances to these burial chambers reveal one of Palmyra's most distinctive traditions. Nearly every burial niche was sealed by a finely carved limestone relief depicting the individual buried inside. Men appear wearing flowing robes and carefully arranged hairstyles. Women display intricate necklaces, earrings, bracelets, and richly folded garments. Some hold scrolls. Others grasp pieces of cloth or jewelry. Children stand beside their parents. Each portrait is unique. Together they form one of the largest surviving collections of ancient funerary sculpture anywhere in the Roman world. These statues were never intended as gods, nor were they meant to frighten intruders. Instead, they served as eternal portraits. The people of Palmyra believed memory carried enormous importance. Families returned to the tombs for generations, recognizing the carved faces of their ancestors. Even today, archaeologists can often distinguish entire family lineages through similarities in clothing, inscriptions, and artistic style preserved across multiple generations. The statues remain silent records of lives once deeply connected to the city. Although Palmyra stood within the Roman Empire, its culture blended influences from many civilizations. Greek artistic traditions mixed with Roman architecture. Persian clothing styles appeared alongside local Semitic customs. Aramaic inscriptions accompanied Greek texts. Religious beliefs reflected an equally diverse society. The city's prosperity came not from isolation, but from its ability to connect distant worlds. Its necropolis reflects that remarkable cultural fusion. Every carved portrait combines traditions from several civilizations into something uniquely Palmyrene. During the 3rd century AD, Palmyra briefly rose to extraordinary political power under its famous queen, Zenobia. For a short time, her kingdom challenged Roman authority across much of the eastern Mediterranean. The rebellion ultimately failed. Roman forces regained control. Although the city survived, changing trade routes and shifting political fortunes gradually weakened its economy over the following centuries. The once crowded necropolis slowly fell into silence. Desert winds swept between the towers. Families stopped returning. The stone faces continued their endless watch alone. Modern archaeology has revealed the extraordinary sophistication of Palmyra's funerary architecture. Tower tombs, underground hypogea, temple tombs, painted ceilings, inscriptions, and hundreds of portrait sculptures have transformed our understanding of this remarkable desert civilization. Many questions, however, remain unanswered. Some statues bear names, others do not. Many faces still belong to people whose identities have vanished with time. They remain familiar, yet anonymous. Perhaps that is what makes Palmyra's necropolis so unforgettable. Most ancient cemeteries preserve only bones. Palmyra preserved faces, expressions, families, entire generations carved into stone. Even after empires collapsed, even after the desert reclaimed the city, the silent guardians remained at their posts, looking across the empty sands, waiting for someone. The prehistoric settlement that may contain the world's oldest map. Located on the Konya Plain of central Turkey, Çatalhöyük was occupied from approximately 7,400 to 6,200 BC during the Neolithic period. It flourished thousands of years before Stonehenge, the pyramids of Egypt, or the first cities of Mesopotamia. At its height, the settlement may have housed between 5,000 and 8,000 people, making it one of the largest known communities of its time. Rather than spreading outward with streets and open spaces, the houses were built tightly together, creating an almost continuous block of mud brick architecture. Movement across the settlement took place almost entirely over the rooftops. Each home followed a remarkably similar design. Walls were constructed from sun-dried mud brick. Wooden ladders led through roof openings into the main living room below. Platforms built along the walls served as places for sleeping, working, and gathering. Large ovens provided warmth while meals were prepared over indoor hearths. When a house became worn beyond repair, its walls were often filled with earth and a new home was built directly on top. Over centuries, This repeated rebuilding gradually formed the large mound visible today. One of Çatalhöyük's most fascinating discoveries lies inside its walls. Many houses were richly decorated with painted murals, geometric designs, hunting scenes, and symbolic artwork. Among these paintings is one that has fascinated archaeologists for decades. It appears to show a dense cluster of rectangular buildings beneath the twin-peaked volcano Hasan Dağ. Some researchers interpret the image as a bird's-eye view of the settlement with the volcano erupting in the background. If that interpretation is correct, it could represent the oldest known map ever created. Others disagree. They suggest the painting may instead depict a leopard skin, a symbolic pattern, or a ceremonial design rather than an actual landscape. The debate continues. No interpretation has achieved universal agreement. Whether it is a map or not, the mural reveals something important. The people of Çatalhöyük were capable of sophisticated symbolic thinking. They decorated their homes with meaning. Walls became places to preserve stories, beliefs, and shared identity. Art was not confined to temples or palaces. It existed within ordinary households. Everyday life and ritual appear to have been closely connected. Another remarkable feature of Çatalhöyük lies beneath the floors. Instead of creating separate cemeteries, families buried many of their dead beneath the platforms inside their own homes. Generations lived above the resting places of their ancestors. Some individuals were carefully wrapped before burial. Others were accompanied by ornaments, beads, or personal possessions. Researchers believe these household burials strengthened family identity and reinforced connections between the living and the dead. The home itself became a place of memory. Unlike later civilizations, Çatalhöyük offers little evidence of grand palaces, royal tombs, or monumental temples. Most houses were similar in size and construction. While differences certainly existed, archaeologists have found relatively little evidence of powerful kings or rigid social classes dominating the settlement. Instead, the community appears to have functioned through cooperation among large groups of households. Exactly how such a large population organized itself without obvious centralized authority remains one of the site's greatest mysteries. Excavations beginning in the 1960s transformed our understanding of early human society. Archaeologists uncovered thousands of buildings, remarkable wall paintings, clay figurines, obsidian tools, woven materials, and some of the earliest evidence for large-scale settled farming communities. Each excavation adds another chapter to humanity's transition from mobile hunter-gatherers to permanent village life. Even today, much of the mound remains unexcavated beneath centuries of accumulated earth. Perhaps that is what makes Çatalhöyük so extraordinary. It reminds us that civilization did not begin with towering monuments or mighty kings. It began with neighbors, families, shared walls, shared rooftops, and perhaps with someone carefully painting the world around them onto a plaster wall, creating an image that may, or may not, be humanity's very first map. Whatever its true meaning, the mystery has endured for nearly 9,000 years, waiting for us to understand it. The ancient fortress with a water system still functioning today, Nagarjunakonda, in present-day Andhra Pradesh, India, was once one of the most important cities in ancient southern India. Today, it is a quiet archaeological site surrounded by the waters of the Krishna River. Nearly 17 centuries ago, however, it was a thriving center of Buddhism, trade, and engineering. Among its greatest achievements was a carefully designed water management system. Parts of that system still direct water naturally today. The city flourished during the 3rd and 4th centuries AD under the Ikshvaku dynasty. Its rulers built monasteries, temples, assembly halls, gardens, and an impressive network of reservoirs and stone-lined channels. Everything was carefully planned to make the best use of the surrounding landscape. Although the Krishna River flowed nearby, the city's engineers did not rely on it alone. Seasonal rainwater was collected and stored. Stone channels carried water across the settlement. Reservoirs held supplies during the dry months. Overflow drains safely released excess water during the monsoon. The entire system worked with gravity rather than mechanical devices. Excavations have revealed how advanced the design really was. Drainage channels ran beneath important buildings. Water tanks were positioned throughout the city. Stone-lined drains carried wastewater away from homes and religious complexes. Many sections still follow their original path, showing how accurately ancient engineers understood the movement of water across the landscape. Nagarjunakonda was also one of the leading Buddhist centers of its time. Monks and pilgrims traveled here from different parts of India. Large monasteries stood beside beautifully decorated stupas. Stone inscriptions record donations from kings, queens, merchants, and ordinary citizens. Together, they created a prosperous community where religion, education, and daily life existed side by side. The site is traditionally linked with the great Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna. However, historians cannot confirm that he actually lived here. The name has survived for centuries, but the connection remains uncertain. Even so, the city became an important place for Buddhist learning and scholarship throughout the ancient world. Its careful planning extended beyond religion. Homes, public buildings, gardens, and water systems were arranged with remarkable organization. Every part of the settlement appears to have been designed with both comfort and sustainability in mind. It was a city built not only to grow, but to endure. The city's decline came gradually. Political power shifted. Trade routes changed. Royal support disappeared. Over time, the monasteries were abandoned. The streets grew quiet. Nature slowly reclaimed the valley. In the 20th century, Nagarjunakonda faced an entirely different danger. Construction of the Nagarjuna Sagar Dam would flood the ancient city beneath a vast reservoir. Before the waters arrived, archaeologists carried out one of India's largest rescue excavations. Hundreds of monuments, sculptures, and inscriptions were carefully moved to higher ground. Many can still be seen today on Nagarjunakonda Island. The original city now lies partly beneath the waters of the reservoir. Yet its legacy has never disappeared. Its temples reveal a flourishing Buddhist civilization. Its inscriptions preserve forgotten voices, and its remarkable water system continues to demonstrate how ancient engineers understood their environment centuries before modern technology. Sometimes, the most enduring monuments are not built to impress the eye. They are the quiet systems beneath our feet, still doing their job, long after the civilization that created them has faded into history. The Roman cosmetics jar found with its contents still intact. The city of Roman London was filled with noise. Merchants called out across busy streets. Blacksmiths hammered glowing iron. Soldiers marched between government buildings. Ships unloaded cargo along the River Thames. Among the thousands of people moving through the city were ordinary men and women going about their daily routines. Some carried food, some carried tools, and some carried small personal possessions. One of those possessions was a tiny metal jar. It looked ordinary, small enough to fit comfortably in the palm of a hand. Yet nearly 2,000 years later, it would become one of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries ever made in Roman Britain. The object was discovered in 2003 during excavations in the heart of modern London. Archaeologists were investigating the remains of a Roman temple complex dating back nearly 2,000 years. Beneath layers of earth and later construction, they uncovered countless everyday objects left behind by the people of ancient Londinium. Among them sat a small tin container. Unlike most cosmetic jars recovered from Roman sites, this one was still sealed. Even more surprising, it still contained its original contents. Normally, organic materials disappear long before archaeologists arrive. Creams dry out, perfumes evaporate, oils break down. After centuries underground, only empty containers usually remain. This discovery was different. When researchers carefully opened the tiny jar, they found a pale cream still filling much of the vessel. Its smooth surface had survived almost intact. Even tiny fingerprints left by the last person to use it were still visible. For a brief moment, it felt as though someone had closed the lid only yesterday. Scientists immediately began studying the mysterious substance. They expected to find a simple mixture of oils or animal fat. Instead, laboratory analysis revealed a surprisingly sophisticated cosmetic recipe. The cream combined animal fat with starch and tin oxide. The fat acted as a moisturizer. The starch helped create a smooth texture. The tin oxide produced a bright white color. Rather than functioning as heavy makeup, researchers believe the mixture was most likely a skin cream designed to brighten and soften the complexion. It was both cosmetic and skincare. The discovery changed what historians understood about daily life in Roman Britain. Fashion was not limited to Rome itself. Even people living on the distant northern frontier followed trends from across the empire. Personal appearance mattered. People invested time and resources into caring for their skin. Beauty routines that seem modern today were already part of everyday life nearly 2,000 years ago. The container itself also deserves attention. It was made from tin, a metal widely available in Roman Britain. Its tightly fitted lid created an almost airtight seal. That simple piece of engineering protected the cream from moisture and oxygen for centuries. Without that careful design, the contents would have vanished long before archaeologists ever uncovered the jar. Sometimes, preservation depends not on luck alone, but on remarkably practical craftsmanship. Perhaps the most fascinating part of the discovery is its deeply personal nature. Ancient history is often told through emperors, battles, temples, and monumental architecture. This tiny cosmetic jar tells a completely different story. It belonged to an ordinary individual, someone who woke each morning, prepared for the day, and cared about how they looked. Their name has been forgotten. Their family is unknown. Yet one small object allows us to glimpse a moment from their everyday life. Who owned the jar remains a mystery. It may have belonged to a wealthy merchant's wife, perhaps the daughter of a Roman official, or even someone born in Britain who had adopted Roman customs after the conquest. No inscription identifies its owner. No written record mentions the cream. Only the fingerprints remain, pressed gently into its surface by someone who never imagined they would survive for nearly 20 centuries. Today, the Roman cosmetic cream pot is preserved as one of the most extraordinary artifacts ever discovered in London. Not because it is large, not because it is valuable, and not because it belonged to an emperor. Its importance comes from something much rarer. It preserved a completely ordinary moment, a small container, a forgotten skincare cream, and the faint touch of the person who last closed its lid, nearly 2,000 years ago. Sometimes, history is not remembered through great monuments. Sometimes, it survives inside the smallest objects, quietly waiting beneath the ground, for someone to open them once again. The ancient civilization that mapped ocean currents without instruments, long before compasses, before sextants, before modern charts. The people of the Pacific were already crossing one of the largest oceans on Earth. They sailed thousands of kilometers between tiny islands, often without seeing land for days. Yet they rarely became lost. Their greatest navigational tool was neither metal nor stone. It was memory, and a simple framework of sticks and shells. The Marshall Islands, scattered across the central Pacific Ocean, became home to one of history's most remarkable navigation systems. For centuries, Marshallese navigators built what are now known as stick charts. These lightweight frameworks were made from thin coconut ribs tied together with plant fibers. Small cowrie shells marked the positions of important islands. At first glance, they look almost abstract, but every line had meaning. These were not maps in the modern sense. Sailors did not carry them aboard their canoes. Instead, experienced navigators studied them before a voyage. They memorized the information. The chart became a teaching tool rather than something used at sea. Once the journey began, knowledge replaced the map. The curved sticks represented something invisible: ocean swells. Across the Pacific, waves travel enormous distances. When they encounter an island, they bend, they reflect, they interfere with one another. These changing patterns create unique movements in the water surrounding every island. Skilled navigators learned to recognize them. By feeling the motion of their canoe, they could tell whether land was nearby, even if it remained beyond the horizon. They noticed subtle changes in the rhythm of the waves, the direction of the swells, the movement beneath the hull. To an experienced navigator, the ocean itself became a map. This knowledge was passed from one generation to the next. Young apprentices spent years learning from master navigators. They memorized the positions of islands, seasonal winds, ocean currents, wave reflections, and the rising and setting points of important stars. Nothing was written down. Everything lived in memory. European explorers who first encountered these navigation systems struggled to understand them. Many believed successful Pacific voyages depended on luck. Modern research has shown otherwise. The voyages were carefully planned. The navigators possessed an extraordinary understanding of their environment. Their knowledge rivaled that of any seafaring culture in the ancient world. Different types of stick charts served different purposes. Some showed the relationships between many islands across large distances. Others focused on a single island group. Each chart reflected generations of careful observation. No two were exactly alike. Many were made specifically for teaching a particular route or region. The charts also reveal something remarkable about ancient science. The Marshallese did not need modern instruments to understand ocean currents. They observed. They remembered. They tested what they learned. Over centuries, those observations became an incredibly accurate system of navigation, one built entirely through experience. Today, only a small number of traditional navigators still preserve this knowledge. Modern GPS has replaced much of the ancient practice, yet the surviving stick charts remain among the most extraordinary artifacts ever created, not because they are complicated, but because they transformed the invisible movements of the ocean into something the human mind could understand. Sometimes, the greatest maps are not drawn on paper. They exist in memory, passed from one generation to the next, guiding sailors safely across an endless sea, long before the first compass ever pointed north. The lost library that tried to collect all human knowledge. For centuries, people have searched for its ruins. Some believe fragments still lie beneath the streets of modern Alexandria. Others think they disappeared forever beneath earthquakes, wars, and centuries of rebuilding. Yet even today, the name of one ancient building continues to symbolize the pursuit of knowledge more than any other: the Library of Alexandria. It was not simply a building filled with books. It was an ambitious attempt to gather every piece of knowledge known to the ancient world. If such a place truly achieved its goal, it may have been the closest thing the ancient world ever had to a universal library. The story begins in Alexandria, Egypt. The city was founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BC after his conquest of Egypt. Although Alexander never lived long enough to see the city flourish, his successors transformed it into one of the greatest centers of learning in the Mediterranean. Under the rule of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Alexandria became a crossroads of cultures. Greek philosophers debated Egyptian priests. Jewish scholars translated sacred texts. Merchants arrived from Africa, Arabia, India, and beyond. Ideas flowed into the city just as constantly as ships entered its famous harbor. Somewhere within this remarkable city stood the Library of Alexandria. It was closely connected to a larger institution known as the Museion, or the Temple of the Muses. This was not a museum in the modern sense. It functioned more like a research academy. Scholars lived there, studied there, taught students, shared discoveries, and devoted their lives to expanding human knowledge. The library formed the heart of that intellectual community. The rulers of Egypt wanted their collection to surpass every other library on earth. They purchased manuscripts wherever they could find them. Officials searched markets across the Mediterranean. Agents traveled to distant kingdoms. Every valuable scroll they encountered was copied. According to several ancient sources, ships arriving in Alexandria were sometimes required to surrender any books they carried. Royal scribes carefully copied each manuscript. The copies were returned to the owners. The originals remained in the royal collection. Whether this policy was enforced exactly as later writers described is debated, but it reflects the extraordinary determination to build the greatest library of the ancient world. No one knows exactly how many scrolls filled its shelves. Ancient estimates vary enormously. Some writers claim the library housed hundreds of thousands of scrolls. Others suggested even larger numbers. Modern historians remain cautious. Many ancient figures were likely exaggerated. Even so, the collection was almost certainly enormous by the standards of the ancient world. It contained works on philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, poetry, history, drama, geography, engineering, and countless subjects that have since disappeared from history. The library was far more than a storage room for books. It became a place where some of history's greatest thinkers worked. The mathematician Euclid developed ideas that shaped geometry for more than 2,000 years. The astronomer Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth with astonishing accuracy using little more than shadows and careful observation. Other scholars compiled dictionaries, edited famous literary works, compared different versions of ancient poems, studied anatomy, observed the stars, and attempted to explain the natural world through reason rather than myth. One of the library's greatest achievements was translation. Many important texts existed in only one language. Alexandria brought together scholars from different cultures who translated these works into Greek. Perhaps the most famous example is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, known as the Septuagint. By preserving and translating knowledge from many civilizations, the library became far more than a Greek institution. It became a meeting place for ideas from across the ancient world. Yet despite its fame, the Library of Alexandria remains surrounded by mystery. Most people have heard that it was destroyed in a single catastrophic fire. The truth appears to be far more complicated. Ancient sources describe several disasters across different centuries. One occurred during Julius Caesar's campaign in Alexandria in 48 BC, when fires near the harbor may have damaged stored scrolls. Later conflicts under Roman rule caused further destruction. Religious and political upheavals transformed the city again during late antiquity, rather than disappearing in one dramatic moment. Many historians believe the library declined gradually over generations. Its physical location remains uncertain. Modern Alexandria has been continuously inhabited for more than 2,000 years. Ancient buildings now lie beneath modern streets, apartments, and harbors. Archaeologists have uncovered remains of the ancient royal quarter, columns, walls, public buildings, and lecture halls connected to the ancient Museion have been proposed. But no excavation has conclusively identified the main library itself. If its foundations survive, they remain hidden beneath one of Egypt's busiest cities. The greatest loss may not have been the building, it was the knowledge. Thousands of works known from ancient references have vanished forever. Many survive only because later writers quoted a few sentences. Entire histories disappeared. Scientific observations were lost. Poems, plays, philosophical debates, medical discoveries. The names of many authors remain, but their words are gone. Historians often wonder how much ancient knowledge vanished with those missing scrolls. Would forgotten inventions have changed history? Were there scientific discoveries centuries ahead of their time? Or were many of the lost works simply copies of texts that survived elsewhere? No one can answer with certainty. The absence of evidence has left room for endless speculation. Today, the Library of Alexandria exists as both history and symbol. Its original shelves may have vanished. Its scrolls may have turned to dust. Its walls may still lie hidden beneath the modern city. Yet its purpose continues to inspire libraries, universities, and researchers around the world. It represented a simple but extraordinary ambition: to gather human knowledge, to preserve it, and to pass it to future generations. Sometimes, the most powerful monuments are not built from stone. They are built from ideas. And although the Library of Alexandria may have disappeared, the search for knowledge it represented has never truly ended.